You need to know which wide receivers should be in or out of your lineup for week 6. We're going game by game through every matchup to talk about the wide receivers that might matter for you. Only 2 teams have a bye this week. That would be the Packers and the Steelers. Before we get to the matchups, there are some wide receivers that you have to keep in your lineup no matter what. Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, DJ Moore, and Amon-Ra St. Brown if he plays. Before we talk wide receivers, we have a quick announcement for you.
Introducing our new app, Draft Lane. Connect with us anytime for your start sit, waiver questions, and more. We can instantly access your roster and tell you the exact right moves to make. Access your past leagues and climb the Draft Lane leaderboard and see how you stack up against your competitors. Both Yahoo and Sleeper are supported. Download Draft Lane today and use the promo code ENDGAME to receive $10 in your account. Available on the App Store and Google Play.
All right, let's kick it off with a Thursday night matchup. That's the Broncos at the Chiefs. Let's start with Courtland Sutton, who's been the leading receiver for the Broncos. Do you feel like he could do something in Kansas City?
Not really. I mean, he could always score, but the Chiefs secondary has been great this year. The defense has been really good. I'm only going to put Courtland Sutton in that start him if you need him category.
Yeah, he's got touchdown upside. You know, we've seen him do that this year, but man, this Broncos passing offense looked rough last week. Say, well, the Jets, like you said, the Chiefs kind of surprisingly good in the secondary, so Sutton just a desperation flex. And what about Jerry Jeudy? Any reason we would think differently of him?
Nope, same thing. I mean, desperation flex. Might not even have the touchdown upside of Sutton, but desperation flex only.
Yeah, if I had to pick one of these guys, it would be Sutton, but I'm going to prefer to pick neither of them if possible. And then let's throw Marvin Mims out there. He has that big playability. Is this a guy who might sneak behind the secondary, get a long score?
Maybe, or he could fumble a punt and get you negative points. Not starting Marvin Mims this week.
Nah, this would be desperation territory, so best to look elsewhere. Now on the Chiefs side, still kind of a wide receiver committee. Rashee Rice didn't get a ton of targets, but he did find the end zone. He's getting targeted there. Is he somebody who interests you against the Broncos?
Yeah, I think interest is the right word. I mean, not a guy I feel like you have to force into your lineup, but he can score. Broncos secondary, not great. I doubt he's going to get Patrick Surtain on him much in this game because of the way he's used. So if you need him, you can start him.
See, yeah, he's a guy I prefer in a non-PPR, maybe a half PPR league, because the main appeal here is touchdown upside. I know he just got his second of the season, but he's been targeted a ton in the red zone, and it's the Broncos, very generous to all opposing offensive players. He's not going to get you a ton of yardage or catches, but he could score, so I think he's a strong flex this week. And then there's Kadarius Toney. I feel like he's kind of the opposite of Rice. He's getting shorter passes. He could get you some points, but I don't know if he's going to score or go for a long play.
Yeah, even in this matchup, I can't start Kadarius Toney.
Right. I mean, maybe a floor play in a PPR league if you're going deep, but that's it. We got another London game this week. It's not Jacksonville this time. We got Baltimore taking on Tennessee. Let's start with Zay Flowers. Making catches, also making drops like last week. So how does he do here?
He should do great. He should have done great last week. He should have boomed last week. It's so disappointing. 2 bad drops. Slipped on like what could have been a long touchdown. But he's a rookie. He's going to do that. It's Tennessee. They're terrible against the pass. I'm going to roll with him again this week. I like Zay Flowers.
I agree. I think he's still a solid start. I mean, there's really nothing else in that Baltimore offense other than the tight end Mark Andrews, who actually led the way, by the way. He had more drops than Zay Flowers or the other receivers. But, yeah, it's a great matchup. Move on from last week. He's a good start. And then on the other side, also only one receiver of note. That's DeAndre Hopkins. He had a big week last week, like you called. Does he do it again against Baltimore?
Probably not. That was the Colts. That's just you just want to attack the Colts with your wide receiver one. Like they just cannot stop wide receiver ones. This is the Ravens, a little bit better. You can still start them, but more of a floor play this week.
Yeah, I think maybe wide receiver 3 territory. I'll say I put him like a peg lower than Zay Flowers. I think I'd prefer Flowers to Hopkins. Hopkins is startable, but might need a touchdown to save his day. Commanders taking on the Falcons. Let's start with Terry McLaurin. I mean, look, everybody in Washington was kind of disappointing last week, except somehow Sam Howell. But Terry McLaurin didn't do anything against the Bears. Does he do anything against Atlanta?
I don't know. I mean, Falcons defense not terrible this year. He's got Sam Howell. He can always score. He can always make a big play. He can always do nothing. Start him if you need him.
I mean, we just saw Nico Collins get limited last week. Atlanta, like you said, kind of a bend, don't break defense, not giving up big games to receivers. Terry McLaurin not having big games. Kind of a flex if you need, honestly. And then there's Jahan Dotson, who continues to be even more disappointing. That target share wasn't even there last week. I don't think we can even go there with him this week.
No, cannot start Jahan Dotson.
And then there's Curtis Samuel, who somehow has still managed to have fantasy relevance ahead of the other two. Is Samuel kind of a sneaky start?
I think so, and not just because of what he did last week. I just like this matchup with him out of the slot. I think that's one area where the secondary is kind of vulnerable. I mean, Curtis Samuel could always do nothing, so I'm only going to put him in the start him if you need him category.
Yeah, he's kind of a forgotten guy, at least in fantasy. I mean, he could be flexed, but again, it's just this whole Washington offense. Who knows what they're going to do any given week? And that leads me to Drake London. I mean, of course, just when everybody was off of him, had a decent game. Desmond Ridder had a good game. Does that give you enough encouragement to start Drake London?
No, I'm still going to keep him in that start him if you need him category because you just never know what you're going to get week to week. You don't know what you're going to get from Ridder, this offense. Start him only if you need him.
Well, I know that it's not fun to be surprised on a weekly basis by your wide receiver, but I'll say not just because last week. I think I feel good enough that I'm going to say I'll start Drake London with some degree of confidence this week, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a future video. Then we got Vikings, Bears. So this Vikings offense, it's going to be without Justin Jefferson with that hamstring injury. What does that mean for Jordan Addison? Is he a must start?
I can't go as far as to say a must start. I mean, you want to say it's the Bears. It's a good matchup. But look, even if the Bears put it on the Vikings, I mean, you know the Vikings are going to throw, and he's got Kirk Cousins. So I think Jordan Addison this week in this matchup is a good start.
Yeah, I'm not going to go so far as to say you have to put Addison in there. We got trapped by the Bears last week, right? We thought that Washington was going to go off. And you see what happened to McLaurin and Dotson. So I think Addison's still a solid start. The target share should definitely be there. So I'd say a solid, maybe high-end wide receiver 3. And then KJ Osborne, mostly just kind of a risky flex play. Is he more than that?
I think so, because again, not a terrible matchup. We know the Vikings will throw, and unlike Sam Howell, who just threw to the tight ends and the running backs, Kirk Cousins will throw to the wide receivers. So again, I'm not going to say like a must start or anything, but a decent start this week.
A flex with upside. That's as far as I can go. I mean, without a touchdown, it might leave you wanting, but I mean, it's not the worst matchup. And then we've seen what DJ Moore has done the last couple of weeks. But is there room for Donald Mooney now to make an impact because of the matchup and because Chase Claypool is out of there?
I mean, maybe, but you can't feel great about him. Just to start him if you need him guy because of the matchup.
Yeah, I can't deny that there is risk here. I mean, he's coming off a game where he didn't catch a single pass. I've got to think that there will be some openings for him with all the attention now Moore will be getting. Fields will probably look his way a little bit. It's the Vikings, so for that reason, I think I like him as a streamer this week. Next, Seattle is taking on Cincinnati. Let's start with DK Metcalf. Still the top guy there, going against this Bengals defense. Is he a solid start?
Definitely. This Bengals secondary doesn't scare me whatsoever. If I got DK Metcalf, I'm starting him.
Yep, I'm going to agree. This is a game that should be pretty high scoring. So DK Metcalf, definitely solid wide receiver 2. What about Tyler Lockett?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, he's always got big time upside. This secondary, he could have chances. Again, if I got Lockett, I'm starting him.
Agree. Guy hard to keep on your bench, but especially look at last week. Bengals, Hollywood Brown made some big plays against them. Lockett could do something very similar, maybe even more. And then what about T. Higgins? No word yet on whether he'll be available. If he gives it a go, are you just putting him in your lineup?
If he practices all week, yes, because it's the Seahawks. That shouldn't scare you. Joe Burrow looks great. So if he actually practices, then yes, I'm playing T. Higgins.
Right. Again, we're always wary. And like if T. Higgins was even playing last week, I said I wasn't going to play him. If he plays this week, might be different, but you just got to be sure he's actually playing a full game. So if he does, I think I would have to start him. Niners taking on the Browns, coming off a bye. So what about Brandon Ayuk? I mean, he didn't have a big game on Sunday night against the Cowboys, but still, you kind of have to roll with him.
Yeah, not a great matchup here against the Browns, but I mean, he's such a good player. The 49ers offense is a juggernaut. For the most part, if you got Brandon Ayuk, you're starting him.
Yeah, you never know which Niners player is going to go off, but that's why you need to keep him in your lineup. So Ayuk still, until further notice, pretty much a must start. And then what about Debo? Feel the same about him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel as good about Debo as I do about Ayuk, but still, I mean, Debo, one of these guys that can hit a home run at any time. You don't want that on your bench if possible. So unless you have really good options, you're starting Debo.
Yep, the upside is too great. I agree. I do respect this Cleveland defense. It's on the road. Don't feel like the Niners are going to go off, but I'm still playing Debo if I got him. And then there's Amari Cooper. Still a solid play despite not having Watson maybe this week.
Well, if he doesn't have Watson, then no, you can't start him. I mean, no chance. But if Watson plays, even though it's the 49ers, one thing they are susceptible to is the big play. So I don't love him this week, of course, but I think if Watson plays, you pretty much have to roll with Amari Cooper in most cases.
Gonna agree. If everything's good there, you play Cooper. If Watson's out or if he's still kind of not 100%, I guess if he's not 100%, he's just not going to play. We've already established that. So, for the most part, I want to keep Cooper in my lineup, though. Saints at the Texans. Let's talk Chris Olave. No longer a no-doubter because even though he found the end zone, he just hasn't been putting up big numbers lately. Does he bounce back here?
I think he does. I like this matchup for him a lot. Carr looked much healthier last week. I'll talk about him more in another video, but for now, I'll just say if I got Olave, I'm starting him.
Yeah, I agree. Even though he may not be a no-doubter, there's so few receivers that have his kind of upside, and this matchup isn't going to make me pass on him, so I'm still starting Olave. What about Michael Thomas? That floor is still there, but where's the ceiling?
Yeah, I mean, there's really not a ceiling, but he does have the floor. It is a good matchup, so if you need him, you can start him.
Yeah, I guess as a flex, if you want to take your few points, I think that's fine. He's startable. He's just never going to excite me. And then Rashid Shaheed, other end of the spectrum there, volatile flex.
Yeah, exactly. If you're swinging for the fences, Shaheed could do it in this matchup.
All right, and then Nico Collins, not a big game in week 5. Now he's going to get Marshawn Lattimore. Is that enough to scare you away from putting him in your lineup?
Not completely. I mean, he's not like my favorite start this week, but I think for the most part, if you got Nico Collins, you're probably starting him.
Yeah, the volume should still be there. I know it's not a great matchup, but he is still startable. So, like you said, don't expect a big game, but I don't expect him to do nothing either, especially because they could be without Tank Dell. Now, Tank Dell in the concussion protocol left last week's game early. Obviously, if he is ruled out, you don't worry about it. But what if he clears and he makes it? Do you start him?
Yeah, I don't feel great about him in this matchup. He's another one of these guys. He could always boom, but he could always bust. So, if you're ready to swing for the fences, go ahead and flex him.
Yeah, I'd rather not risk it if he's not practicing all week. He really didn't do much the last 2 weeks either. So I would say probably just sit Dell for now. Colts at the Jaguars. Well, the quarterback for Indianapolis is not going to be Anthony Richardson. He is going to be out for a little while. So Gardner Minshew thrown to Michael Pittman in Jacksonville. What does that make you think?
Yeah, I mean, it probably caps his upside to a degree, but we've seen Michael Pittman be fine with Minshew this year. So I still think for the most part, he's a solid start, just not a ton of upside.
Right. A floor play. I felt really good about him last week. Not as much this week, but he's not somebody I'm, going to make sure I bench just because of Minshew. I think he's fine. Josh Downs did have himself a nice game last week. Do you think that Minshew looks his way again?
Probably. Downs has been coming on. Again, Not a lot of upside here. I'll put Downs in the, flex him if you need him category.
Yeah, I'm definitely lower on him this week. Again, a lot of I think last week's performance was because he faced the Titans defense. So I really don't want to start Downs unless I really need somebody. I just don't think he has enough upside this week. And then Calvin Ridley, I guess we could say he had his bounce back game, had some nice numbers, and a lot more targets this past week. So is he back to being kind of a set and forget?
I don't know about that, but if you remember, week 1, he played the Colts. He plays the Colts. I'm starting Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, I'm starting Calvin Ridley this week for sure. And where does that leave Christian Kirk?
Well, hopefully he doesn't have a game like he had against the Colts in week 1, but he's been so involved lately. I think Christian Kirk is just one of those guys for me. If you got him, for the most part, you're just putting him in your lineup and taking whatever he gives you.
Yeah, I mean, it always depends on your other options, but Kirk always has upside. Doesn't necessarily mean he'll repeat history as well from week 1, so I think he's still a solid start. And then we got the Carolina Panthers facing the Miami Dolphins, and this is in Miami. It's pretty clear now that, well, if they have a wide receiver 1 in Carolina, it's Adam Thielen. You're coming around to the fact that he's a guy you have to start.
I am. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I think this week especially, you have to start Adam Thielen.
Adam Thielen, to me, definitely a must start at this point this week because going against the Dolphins, good chance Carolina once again will be playing from behind, having to pass a lot. This is what we've seen. Thielen has been not just the first read, but also the safety blanket for Bryce Young. Going to get some targets, going to get a ton of yardage. Besides starting him for sure where you have him in fantasy, I'm taking advantage of his early line on Underdog. Right now they got Adam Thielen at 65.5 receiving yards. I'm definitely going higher. Look, the past 3 weeks, he's gone over that. In 2 of them, he's gone over 100 yards. He's smashed that. And look, if you are new to Underdog, you can sign up using promo code ENDGAME, and you can pair that up with the new customer special, and that's Pat Mahomes on Thursday night, going over half a yard. Combine those 2 picks, triple your money, or you can take more picks and win up to 20 times your money. And for a limited time still, that deposit match has been extended to $500. So if you use promo code ENDGAME and you're signing up, that means you will get a 100% match for every dollar you put up to $500. Also in Carolina, we got DJ Chark. He scored a touchdown last week. Is he a guy who maybe will benefit from some volume, some garbage time?
I mean, he could, but very risky, has to score. I'm not starting DJ Chark.
I'll say he's always a flex with upside. I mean, obviously there are reasons you could be interested, but again, that's only if you're having to dig deep. And then the rookie Jonathan Mingo. I mean, at times he's gotten targeted, but I think this is a little too deep.
Yeah, a little too deep, not starting Jonathan Mingo.
And then what about Jalen Waddle? I mean, you'd like to think that he's an every week must start, but we can't say that anymore because the numbers haven't been there. Are they there this week?
I mean, maybe. The thing that really worries me for Jalen Waddle this year is his ADOT is really low compared to years past. It's like, and they can run the ball so well, but maybe if Achane is out, they have to throw it more. He can always make a play. He can always score. I think for the most part, if you got Jalen Waddle, you're still starting him.
I can't keep that upside on my bench. I mean, sure, there'll be games where he lets you down, kind of like a Christian Watson type, some of those players that either go off or they do very little. It's Carolina. I'm not benching him. Patriots taking on the Raiders. I think the only question here in the New England side is there any reason to consider any Patriots receiver?
Nope.
But what about a former Patriot who's now with the Raiders, Jacoby Myers?
Yeah, I mean, I keep talking about him. Like, I think people are still really sleeping on Jacoby Myers. He's just like a solid every week wide receiver 2 to me. So, yeah, if I got Jacoby Myers, I'm starting him.
Had another solid game on Monday night. I mean, the target share is clearly there. Yeah, against New England, there's no reason to be worried. This New England defense, as we've seen, is a shell of its former self. Jacoby Myers, solid start. Lions at the Bucks. So here we go again. If the sun god is out, do we roll with Josh Reynolds?
I don't know. I mean, he didn't really play a lot this week. He scored, but he didn't play a lot, dealing with a groin. I don't know. I'd have to be really desperate. For the most part, I'm sitting Josh Reynolds.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even if he's technically the number 1 receiver there, it doesn't mean he's getting a ton of targets. It's still risky to me. So a flex with risk. And then Jameson Williams, obviously going to be eased into action here. Didn't see a ton of targets or the field his first game back. Do you think that is increased enough to make him fantasy relevant this week?
No, not yet. Let me see him get significant snaps first.
I'm not doing it. I mean, I really think he's going to be very boom bust throughout the season. I'm not rolling him out this week. When last we saw Tampa before their bye week, Mike Evans did have an injury. With time to rest, hopefully he'll be back. So if he plays, do you play him?
I think you have to. I mean, he was playing so well before the bye. He looks like he's Baker's guy. It's a tough defense, but still, I think if you got Mike Evans, you're starting him.
Yeah, not an ideal matchup, but yeah, the way that they've been connecting, I think if he's out there, you got to play him. And then what does that mean for Chris Godwin, who put up numbers when Evans was out, but hadn't done a lot before then?
Yeah, it means he goes back to just a floor play in PPR leagues, and that's about it.
Gonna agree. I mean, he is startable. You just can't get too excited, especially, the way Detroit's defense has been playing. Cardinals taking on the Rams. Start with Hollywood Brown. Been looking better each and every week. Does that continue this week?
I don't see why not. Rams secondary doesn't scare me. This guy looks like an every week start right now. I mean, not like a must start, but there's a lot of wide receivers I would start Marquise Brown over this week. So definitely a good start.
Gonna agree. He's looked explosive. I mean, Dobbs didn't have a great game himself last week, but he's getting the ball to his number one guy. So Hollywood, definitely a solid start. And then Michael Wilson, not so good after coming off a career game. Kind of did nothing last week. Is this a rookie that you can trust?
Not really. I mean, desperation start only.
Like any rookie, he'll have ups and downs. Who knows what'll happen this week? So only flex if you really are searching deep. And then what about Rondale Moore? He got more involved. And look, if James Conner is out, he's kind of a substitute in the running game with those short passes and those handoffs. But is that enough for you in a PPR league?
I mean, he's a guy you can start him if you need him in a PPR league. He'll have a decent floor. Rams actually give up quite a bit of targets from the slot. So you can start him if you need him as a floor play in PPR leagues only.
There you go. Well said. I mean, only on the flex radar. Eagles taking on the Jets, partly because of the matchup, but also partly because he's had some down games. Devontae Smith, no longer somebody we just can't question, but is there a compelling reason for you to bench him?
No, I can't bench him. And if you think about this matchup, Sauce Gardner probably going to play on A.J. Brown a lot. I mean, look, they still got, DJ Reed maybe back from concussion, but yeah, I can't just bench Devonta Smith unless I have really good options. So for the most part, I'm starting him.
Yeah, I know people tend to get nervous. Guy has down games. A.J. Brown is taking all the attention away. And even Dallas Goedert had a big game. At some point, there will be kind of a get-right game for Devontae Smith, too. I'm not saying this is it, but yeah, he's a guy. I can't keep that potential on my bench, kind of like Jalen Waddle. And then there's Garrett Wilson. I mean, it's just so frustrating. But what do you think against the Eagles this week after not having a big game against Denver last week?
Yeah, you can't feel good. I mean, I'm not going to say you have to outright sit him, but start him only if you need him.
I mean, that's it. He's a risky flex play too. He's one of these guys that could make a big play or could do nothing, as we've seen. I don't feel good about him against this Eagles defense. I'm not going to start him if I don't have to. And what about Allen Lazard? Has been kind of slowly coming on, but is there enough of a ceiling?
No, not in this matchup. Not starting Allen Lazard.
No, I'm definitely not considering Lazard this week. Giants taking on the Bills. We're just going to skip over the whole Giants receiving core. Now in Buffalo, Stephon Diggs is a stud. Gabe Davis has been kind of keeping pace almost in a couple of weeks. So is Gabe Davis a strong start now on a weekly basis?
I don't know about on a weekly basis, but this week, I mean, you'd have to have some really good options to not put Gabe Davis in your lineup against the Giants. Solid start with tons of upside this week.
Yeah, definitely. Gotta be encouraged. I mean, even if you're not completely sold on him the rest of the season, it's the Giants. You're starting Gabe Davis. And then Monday night, we'll get the Cowboys at the Chargers. Well, this whole Cowboys offense has been a little underwhelming. I think you still got to start CeeDee Lamb, especially in this matchup, but do you have to consider a guy like Michael Gallup?
I don't know if you have to, but I certainly think you can. He's getting involved in the Chargers. Not a good secondary, not a good defense. I think if you need Michael Gallup, you can start him.
I'd like to be able to start a guy like Gallup in a matchup like this. I got to see this Dallas offense figure things out. Maybe it's the play calling now with McCarthy taking over. I don't know what it is. The offensive line's supposed to be healthy. Now, I'm going to take my chances elsewhere. So I'm going to say no to Gallup, and I think it's time for me to kind of give up holding out hope on Brandon Cooks, too.
Yeah, I'm definitely saying no to Brandon Cooks, even in this matchup.
In the Chargers side, well, you're good with Keenan. With no Mike Williams, does that make Josh Palmer a solid option?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's easy to look at the 49ers and see what they did to this defense. Remember, 3 of those touchdowns came to George Kittle, and the other one came to the fullback, Kyle Juszczyk. It wasn't the wide receivers, so can't feel great about Josh Palmer in this matchup. I can only put him in the start him if you need him category.
Yeah, there will be games going forward where I feel pretty good about Josh Palmer, but like you said, this isn't it. Only kind of a desperation start this week. And let's end with the rookie, Quentin Johnston. Do you think out of necessity, coming off the bye, they figure ways to get him more involved?
I mean, maybe, but it's such a tough matchup. Can't feel great about him. No way I can start him this week.
Yeah, no, he's only a bench stash, if even that, at this point for me. No way I'm starting him. Now you know which wide receivers should be in or out of your lineup for week 6. What about running back? We got that and everything else you need to win in fantasy in our week 6 playlist. Check them all out right here.